What's up, friends? Today's tutorial is a holiday-themed gingerbread man. If you're painting right along with me today, you just need 5 colors: a warm yellow, a warm red, a vibrant Christmas green, a brown, and a dark. I'm going to be using Holbein Gamboge Nova, Scarlet Lake, and Daniel Smith Hooker's Green, Burnt Sienna, and Indigo. And in opaque white, I'll be using my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White for those white little details at the end. My brush is a silver black velvet size 8 round brush, and my paper is my Arches 140 pound cotton cold pressed watercolor journal. You'll need a rag or paper towel for blotting, a water jar, and a pencil. Let's get started. Let's start with the sketch. I'm just going to decide where I want the top of the gingerbread man's head to be and the bottom of his little legs. I'm going to have him tilted at a slight angle, and I'm actually going to create a rough square shape tilted sideways to indicate his 4 limbs in either corner here, and then the head is a round shape that just comes above that, so it almost looks like a baby bottle right now. But that's just so I can get the size and placement. From there, I'm going to sketch a little bit more confidently, and you can see the arms and legs are just really curvy. You do not have to go for perfection here. We're making a subtle curvy star shape, something like that. Then you can go ahead and erase those excess pencil lines. We don't need our square anymore. That was just to guide our initial sketch. So there's the outline. Pretty simple, kind of looks like an amoeba. No detail yet. All right, I am going to sketch on the bow tie. And we'll put it right here in the middle. Little circle in the middle, and then 2 triangular shapes coming out of that bow tie. And then let's give him some red buttons. You can make these as big as you want or as little as you want. The reason I'm sketching these embellishments ahead of time is that they're not going to be white. I'm going to do these little details in color, whereas the face and any other embellishments that I decide to add are going to be with my white. So I can save those details for the end with my bleed proof white. All right, now it doesn't even bother me that one leg's bigger than the other. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. So now it's time to start painting. You could make this a very simple illustrative style by simply just coloring in your shapes with solid colors. I'm going to show you how you can take it a step further and make it look really three-dimensional by darkening some values and creating a light source and a shadow side. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to start with our burnt sienna color. This is Daniel Smith burnt sienna, but if you have another brand, that's totally okay. I'm also going to use some Gamboge Nova. This is a Holbein color. It's a warm yellow. I'm going to mix that a little bit to the side of the burnt sienna. I want more of this golden color for the area of the gingerbread man that's in the light, so more on this side. I'll show you in a minute. Now mix up a generous amount of paint. You want enough to be able to cover the entire surface. So I have kind of these 2 separate puddles almost touching each other, but I'm going to start with my more golden color. And so starting from the right side, using the big belly side of the brush, I'm going to fill that in quickly, painting around the bow. Now you do want to work quickly around these details so that your paint doesn't form any hard edges. I want it to look like a nice flat wash, so I have to keep pulling the color along, keep moving it along as quick as I can, grabbing the wet bead edge of that paint and just moving it, covering every space as quick as I can. So around these details, that makes it a little bit tricky, but just do your best. Try to get those around those as fast as you can. And then just keep going. And if you get inside your lines a little bit, that's okay. I'm going to make those buttons red, so this color won't affect it that much anyway. So we're calling this a flat wash, wet on dry, in this golden red color. Perfect for a gingerbread man. But you can see how fast I'm painting. I just want it to look like a nice even wash. Now if you are using burnt sienna, you might see an interesting effect in the paper, like right here. It has this pebbly look to it. That's called granulation. Burnt sienna is a granulating color. Gamboge Nova is not, but you're going to see a little of that granulation from the mix of the two colors. Now, while this is still damp, I'm grabbing thick, creamy burnt sienna straight out of the palette, and I'm going to swipe that along the left side of our gingerbread man. So far, he looks pretty flat, right? But as soon as we start to add a shadow and deepen up this left side with a darker color, it's going to begin to look more three-dimensional, which is always very exciting. So we're giving him a nice toasted edge over here, and we're creating a clear light source. We can now see that the light, our imaginary light source, is coming from the right side, creating a shadow here on the left. Don't forget this little leg over here. The left side of the leg will be in shadow. We might see a little hint of it on that shoulder too, but for the most part, we don't want to make him look too thick, too doughy. So there we go. We have our rough gingerbread man all filled in with some color. Really quick, if you like these short seasonal watercolor tutorials that are under 20 minutes, you'll love Watercolor Mastery. Inside the Watercolor Mastery membership, we have the daily challenges, which are released every single weekday for an entire calendar year, including some seasonal tutorials like this one. Every single tutorial comes with a reference photo, a traceable line drawing, and a complete list of supplies and colors used for each tutorial. The membership also includes the 30 Days to Watercolor, which is a complete course for beginners, which will take you through all of the basic techniques of watercolor so you can feel confident and start painting right away. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check that out. All right, let's get back to the video. Now, to make it even more convincing in the shadow, I'm going to use my indigo for the first time. I'm going to mix in a little of my burnt sienna with that. And let's go ahead and paint a shadow on the left side of the gingerbread man. And this is going to look like an imaginary surface that he's sitting on. It's going to help him feel like he's in space. Sitting on a surface actually has some dimension to him. It's okay if it touches the edge of your cookie right there. We'll give a little shout out to this side of the leg as well. Then I'm going to rinse and remove, and then quickly swipe along those edges to soften them out. So a quick swipe of the brush with a little bit of water in it, and that looks like a soft shadow. Really important you don't have too much water in your brush for that, or you may end up with a mess. Watercolor is a gentle balance of water control and understanding how much water is in your brush versus on the paper. And that just takes practice, logging your brush miles. I'm going to soften that out even more. All right, so now we need to let that dry. If your gingerbread man is dry enough, we can now add the colorful embellishments. This is your chance to use your Christmas red. This is Holbein Scarlet Lake. So I could paint it in flat. However, I want it to look somewhat dimensional. So I'm going to create a rounded highlight right to the right, not quite in the middle, to the right of each little button. So I'm going to negative paint around a little highlight right there. And this takes a delicate touch. You got to slow down a little bit as you're painting around these details. If you want to switch to a smaller brush, you certainly can. I find a size 8 brush works just fine for most of these things. All right, again, I want to make it look like there's a light source coming from the upper right. So we're leaving those little buttons all shiny. Now I don't want it to be pure white, so I rinsed and removed most of the paint from my brush, and now it's just damp. And I'm going to gently soften inside of those highlights, pulling the paint into the highlight and dulling it down just a little bit. Then I'm going to take my indigo mix and add a shadow to each of those little buttons, just to the left side. And suddenly it looks like it's popping off the page, doesn't it? Really comes to life when we add our shadow. And I'm going to soften it out ever so slightly, again with a clean damp brush. Awesome. Next is our bow tie. Hooker's green works great. It's a really lovely Christmassy jungle green. And same thing with this. We want it to look three-dimensional. So to do that, we have to have more than one value. Right now, I'm just painting on a light value of the green. And this will serve as the lightest color in the bow tie. From here, we can start to go darker with our shadows and build up the values. Let's let it dry for just a moment. While that's drying, if your surface is dry enough, you can start to add some texture to your cookie. We can take that paint that's still on our palette, make sure you've rinsed all the green out though, and dried your brush. And now I'm going to do something called a dry brush technique, where I simply scrape the brush across the surface of the paper, and you're going to see it kind of catching on the surface of the paper, creating a little bit of texture. So I want this almost bumpy effect on the cookie. I want it to look like there's little pock marks, you know, that's what happens when cookie dough bakes. You've got little divots, little dips, and it still should look somewhat smooth. But now it has a bit of texture, and I can take the tip of my round brush and actually add some little dots just with that tip of the brush. Don't make these too perfectly spaced. And I would say concentrate them more on the left side where you see the shadow, because as the thing is emerging towards the light, we start to really see that texture more. It gets more washed out in the light side. So little dots will add a cookie-like texture. Oh, it looks like you could just pick it right up off the page, doesn't it? Okay, let's come back to our bow tie. It's dry enough now that we can add a darker green, so more of the same color. And make sure, oops, my brush is not quite wet enough. If it's catching on the page, just dip the tip in the water. And you can continue to remove a little bit as you go. I want to leave a highlight on the bow tie, again, so that it looks three-dimensional and shapely. Oh yes, already that's looking like a lovely dollop of frosting that was carefully placed right there. And then we'll take our indigo and really increase the shadow. Remember to keep it on the left side of every curve because we want it to look like the light is coming from over here. There we go. Okay, I think we're ready for our bleed-proof white. Now, just like everything else in the painting, we're going to need to make the frosting look three-dimensional, but we need to paint the white first. So we'll start with this. Bleed-proof white will already have a little bit of depth to it because it's going to look thicker on the paper than just thin, pure watercolor. Make sure that the surface is dry. This is still a little damp, so while that's drying all the way, I'm going to go ahead and do this embellishment here. We're just going to make it look like piped frosting, creating a curvy shape on our gingerbread man's arms and legs. So work slowly and carefully, something like that. And then we'll come over to this side. Make sure your paint is thick enough that it'll go on nice and bright white. If it's slightly thin, it won't look quite as convincing that it's frosting. So let's add that piping to the leg too. Just a nice curvy shape. Oops, and I'm messing mine up a little. So yeah, I find that just kind of a delicate dabbing in the shape that I need will work the best. If you're really talented and can do the shape in one swipe of the brush, I applaud you. I'm not there yet. If you need it to be just a little looser for you so it's not catching on the paper, just dip the tip of your brush in water again. But you still want your paint to be fairly thick because the white should be as pure and bright as possible. All right, and you don't want it to be perfect. Remember, this is a handmade cookie, so it doesn't have to be perfect. One more limb, and then we get to do the best part, the smiley face. Yes, that's dry enough now that I can paint this little arm. And I want it to look like beautiful, thick frosting. Okay, doesn't that look cool? Next is the face, the best part. So all you need to do is a smiley face. You can make it a little wider on the corner of the mouth. I think that's cute. And then 2 round eyes. And just do your best to create a nice circle shape. All right, now we have to make these look 3-dimensional to match the feeling of everything else in the cookie. But doesn't that look fun? So rinse all that white out, cover your white up as soon as you're done. And now let's add a shadow to each of those bits of white frosting using our indigo. Let's start with this one because we know it's already dry. And we're just going to swipe along the left side of our white. We can mix in a little bit of burnt sienna so it's not just pure black. We want it to look like a shadow on a cookie. Wow, that helps so much. So to bring your brush to a nice fine point, just keep rolling it on your palette and that'll bring it right back so it snaps into a point again if you're having a hard time with these little details. Or feel free to switch to a smaller brush. Now on this leg, I'm just going to kind of do the left side of each of these curves, keeping in mind where the light source is. We don't want it to look too perfectly outlined because that can look kind of fake. And then on this leg, again, I'm looking at the left side of each curve for the shadow. And then we'll do that for the little arm. And you can just go ahead and swipe along the whole left side here, just because the light source is directly across from it. And then finally on the face, on the left side of each eye, we'll add a shadow. And on the left side of the smile. I'm going to rinse and remove some of that and then gently soften these little shadows out. Yeah, there we go. There's our finished gingerbread man. Thanks for painting with me today. If you or your artist friends are looking for a great gift, check out my store. You can get a t-shirt just like this one. I'll see you in the next video.